All right, let's dive right into building a team, a company, like a whole culture where design is everywhere, not just a department. Our guide today is this analysis, leading human-centered teams cultivating a design culture.
Sounds good to me.
And, this isn't just about like making things look pretty, right? It's
Yeah.
about how deeply design can impact a company's success.
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking about embedding design into the DNA of how an organization solves problems,
Yeah.
how they create their solutions.
So let's break down this design culture thing.
Okay,
So it's
yeah.
not just about designers, right?
Right. This analysis makes it super clear. It's about a set of values across the whole organization.
Yeah.
Like from the CEO all the way to, the intern who just started yesterday.
So what are those values? Give us the secret sauce.
I love that. So think about it like a recipe for innovation. We need a big dose of empathy, really deeply understanding your users and how they're feeling. I remember this one story in the analysis. It was a team developing a new medical device. They were so focused on the tech specs
Oh, yeah.
that they totally missed the patient experience.
Yeah.
And they didn't realize how clunky and uncomfortable their design was until they, followed patients around.
That's a great example. It really shows how empathy can give you these insights that you just wouldn't get from data alone.
Wow.
What else is in this recipe?
Curiosity.
Yep.
So like empowering people to just ask why all the time.
Yeah.
Challenge the assumptions. Explore all the possibilities,
Okay.
even the crazy ones.
I like it. I'm into those what-if moments. What else?
We need a healthy dose of iteration. Understanding that no idea is perfect right away.
Mm-hmm.
So experimentation and continuous improvement.
Got it.
It's like key.
So embracing that messiness of the creative process
Totally.
and just being okay with refining those ideas along the way.
Precisely. And last but not least, to kind of blend all this together, you need collaboration. And we were talking about teamwork between people from, all different backgrounds, different departments, all that.
Yeah, because if marketing is off in their own world and, design is somewhere else, they're never going to come up with good solutions, right?
Silos kill design culture.
Right.
And, that brings us to, I think the most crucial ingredient, and that's psychological safety.
Oh, okay.
Creating an environment where people feel safe to take those risks, share ideas, even admit when they've messed up, without fear of judgment.
So it's not just about having the values, it's also about creating the culture where people feel comfortable expressing them, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Think about it.
Yeah.
If you're worried about, getting shut down or looking dumb, you're not going to share your best ideas, right?
Right.
The really innovative ones.
Totally. And that's why companies are making such a big deal about design culture, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not just some abstract, feel-good thing. It leads to innovation, to engagement, to all that good stuff.
It's about results.
Yeah. Something our listeners can actually apply, right?
Yeah.
Not just some fancy buzzwords.
This analysis shows that strong design culture, it's not just good for morale, which is nice,
Yeah.
but it also gives you tangible results. You think about it.
Yeah.
A culture that really encourages empathy leads to better solutions. Solutions that, actually meet the needs of the user.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So happy customers, which I imagine leads to more business success, right? What else?
Well, when people feel like they're valued and their ideas are heard, they get more invested in their work, right? So that leads to better retention rates.
Makes sense. And adaptability, too. It's not enough to have a great product. You need to be able to adapt to a changing market.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You're right. That focus on experimentation and feedback that we talked about,
Yeah.
it really gives you the edge in responding to change,
Yeah.
evolving customer needs, all that. It's like you've got a built-in innovation engine.
Okay, I'm sold on the why of all this.
Okay, great.
But now let's get practical.
Right, let's get into it.
How do you build this dream team? I doubt it's as easy as just putting up a poster that says, design matters.
You are right. It takes a bit more than a motivational speech and a poster.
Right.
This analysis breaks down the process into 7 core elements, like pillars of a design culture.
7. Okay, hit me with the first one. I'm ready.
Okay, so we already touched on it, but I really want to emphasize it because it is that important. Psychological safety.
Okay.
It's the bedrock.
Yeah.
Without it, the rest of it doesn't matter.
Right, because you can't have creativity if people are afraid to make mistakes.
Exactly.
It's like, teaching someone to ride a bike. You got to let them fall off a few times.
Yeah, exactly.
What's next?
This one might seem obvious, but cross-disciplinary collaboration. Bring together people from design, engineering, marketing, customer support from the start.
Busting down those silos we talked about?
Exactly. Innovation happens when you have different perspectives coming together.
Yeah.
You get more creative solutions, the ideas are more well-rounded,
Hmm.
and ultimately the product just serves the user better.
I'm liking this blueprint so far. What's number 3?
Okay, number 3. This is the heart of human-centered design, empathy-building activities.
Okay, but what does that look like? Like, how do you actually build empathy in a team?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
There are lots of ways, but user interviews are probably the most powerful. And I'm not talking about just asking users what they want. It's about really sitting down with them, listening to their experiences, their frustrations, getting inside their heads.
That sounds super valuable. It's one thing to look at like data, but it's another thing to just hear from the people you're designing for.
Mhm.
Are there other ways to build empathy besides user interviews?
Yeah, absolutely. Shadowing, so actually observing users in their natural environment, seeing how they're interacting with your product. You might be surprised by what you see.
It's like walk a mile in someone else's shoes. You know, you can't understand someone's experience until you've seen things from their perspective.
Yeah. And these empathy-building activities, they benefit the products, right?
Yeah.
But they also benefit the team.
Okay.
It creates a more collaborative environment, a more understanding and supportive work environment.
So we got psychological safety, collaboration, empathy. What's number 4?
Okay, number 4 is curiosity-driven exploration. Encourage your team to ask why constantly. Challenge those assumptions, explore new possibilities, and don't be afraid to fail.
So like getting rid of that, we've always done it this way mentality
Get rid of that.
and just embracing a mindset of what if, right?
Exactly. It's about continuous learning and discovery.
And you know what? That kind of curiosity is contagious. When you see your colleagues doing that, it makes you want to do it too. So it makes a more dynamic and innovative workplace. Right. Okay. Give me number 5.
Number 5, this one's important, an iterative mindset.
Yeah.
Embrace experimentation, prototyping, continuous improvement.
So not being afraid to try things and fail fast and learn from your failures.
Yeah. Understanding that the first version, it's rarely the best version.
Right.
It's about constantly seeking that feedback,
Right.
iterating, refining, all of that.
I see how that ties back to the psychological safety, right?
Yes.
And the collaboration piece.
All comes together.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
if you don't have that safe space, you're never going to, embrace the process. Okay, what's number 6?
6, this is all about measurement, user-centered metrics. Measuring success based on the outcomes for the user, not just the business metrics.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
So it's not just about like the bottom line, right? It's about how well you're serving the people that use your product.
Exactly. Are your users happy?
Yeah.
Are they finding value in what you created? Are they telling their friends about it? These are the questions that matter.
And that focus on the human element, I really like that. It reminds me of something I read recently about companies moving away from like traditional performance reviews and instead focusing on like impact metrics. How are you actually making a positive difference?
Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, you ready for the last one?
Yeah, give me number 7. Let's complete this blueprint.
Okay, this one might seem obvious, but it's really important. It's often overlooked. Visible leadership support. You need to demonstrate a real commitment to human-centered design principles. And not just with words, but with actions.
So it's not enough for, the CEO to give a speech about how important design is. They have to actually like live it.
Right, exactly. Leaders have to be involved in the design process. They have to champion design thinking and just create a culture where everyone feels good about putting the user at the center of everything.
So it's like setting the tone from the top down, right?
Yes.
And making sure everyone feels they're part of this design-driven mission.
When leadership embraces it, it sends a really powerful message.
Okay, so we've got our 7 pillars.
Yes.
Psychological safety, collaboration, empathy, curiosity, iteration, user-centered metrics, and visible leadership support. Now I want to see it in action, I want to see an example. Does it actually work?
Yes, it does. And there are a bunch of fantastic examples in this analysis. But I think the one that's the most interesting is Google's 20% time policy.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that. Tell me more. It sounds amazing.
Yeah. It's a really great example of how a company can support a culture of innovation by trusting their employees and giving them freedom.
Mhm.
So basically, Google lets engineers spend 20% of their time working on their own personal projects, whatever interests them.
Wait, hold on. They just let their engineers tinker around on company time. That seems risky.
Yeah, it does.
Especially for a company as big as Google.
Right.
Yeah.
It seems counterintuitive, but it has been crazy successful. Google realizes that good ideas come from all kinds of places, right?
Yeah.
Unexpected places. By giving their employees autonomy and encouraging them to uh, experiment, they're tapping into all this creativity and innovation.
I'm impressed. But it must paid off, right? What came out of this 20% time thing?
So Gmail, right.
Oh, wow.
And AdSense.
Right.
We're both born from that.
So these engineers were just messing around and they created products that made like billions of dollars. That's wild.
Yeah.
It really speaks to the power of trust and allowing people to, explore their passions.
It also ties back to those core elements that we were just talking about.
Totally. The autonomy, the experimentation, the psychological safety, it's all there, right?
Yeah.
But this Google example is amazing. But is it realistic for other companies? I mean, Google has a ton of resources. They're huge.
That's a good question.
Can smaller companies really do this? With tighter budgets and deadlines.
That is a good question, and it's something we'll explore more later on in this deep dive. Because while the Google example is super inspiring, it's important to remember that there's no one right way to build a design culture. What works for Google might not work for, a small startup. But the principles behind it, the trust, the autonomy, the belief in your people, that can be applied to any company.
Okay, I like that.
You know?
So it's about adapting those principles, right?
Yes.
To whatever your situation is.
Exactly. The key is that innovation really thrives when you give people the space to be creative and try new things.
Yeah.
So build a culture that celebrates that experimentation and views failure as a way to learn.
Yeah.
Right?
This is all really fascinating, and I'm sure our listeners are, excited to hear more about how they can apply these principles.
Well, hold on to your hats, because in the next part of our deep dive, we'll get into the practical steps you can take to cultivate this culture in your own team.
Wait, hold on. You said next part. We're not taking a break, right?
Oh, right.
It's a deep dive. No breaks.
You're right. No breaks. Just pure design culture goodness.
I like it. Let's keep going.
All right, so where were we?
So Google's approach is great, but maybe not for everyone, right? Like,
Right.
what about the challenges? Building a design culture, it can't always be easy.
You're right. It's definitely not always easy. And this analysis, it talks about some of the hurdles that companies face. And a lot of them, they're pretty relatable.
Okay, like what kind of roadblocks should people be prepared for?
Well, first, there's often just resistance to change. People like routine, right?
Ooh, right.
Like when you implement a new culture, you're changing things up.
Yeah.
You're asking people to change how they do things, how they think about things, maybe let go of some old habits.
Right.
That can be scary for some people.
Yeah, especially in a workplace, right, where they've been doing things a certain way for a long time.
Totally. And then there's the problem of measuring culture change.
Yeah, how do you do that?
How do you measure something like culture?
Yeah.
It's not like numbers on a spreadsheet. It's more about mindsets changing,
Right.
behaviors changing. It's hard to quantify.
Yeah, you can't just put a number on things like empathy or how well people are collaborating.
Exactly. So how do you know if it's working?
Yeah.
The analysis suggests focusing on, more qualitative data,
Okay.
like employee surveys, feedback, observing how teams work together, all that.
So looking for those little changes in how, teams work together, how they solve problems.
Yeah, it's the little things. And, it's also about accepting that culture change, it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight.
Right. It's a process.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Hmm.
And it requires effort and commitment from everyone,
Mm-hmm.
especially the people at the top.
Okay, so resistance to change, and then, it's hard to measure how well it's working. What other challenges are there?
There's also the balance between freedom and structure.
Oh, okay.
So remember how we talked about autonomy?
Mm-hmm.
Giving employees the freedom to explore, right? Well, if you give too much freedom, it can be chaotic and you lose focus.
Right.
But too much structure, that kills creativity.
Right.
It's like finding that sweet spot.
Right. It's like being a manager. Right. You don't want to be too hands-off, but you don't want to micromanage either.
Exactly. It's tough. And finding that balance, it's tricky, especially as the company gets bigger and things are changing all the time.
Yeah. It requires communication and feedback.
Constant adjustment.
Right. And speaking of adapting, another challenge is keeping things consistent over time, right?
Absolutely. Building a design culture, it's a long game. It takes continuous effort from everybody.
Right, because it's easy to get excited about something new, and then you lose momentum, right?
It happens all the time.
Yeah, other priorities come up, deadlines, all that.
Right. A company will launch a new design initiative, right?
Yeah.
Lots of energy, lots of excitement, but then it just fizzles out because they don't keep putting in the work.
So how do you prevent that?
Well, the analysis, it recommends a few things. One is to make design thinking part of everyday work. So it's not just a workshop or a special project. It's how the company operates, you know.
So it's like, it's just ingrained in how people work, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what you want. And another thing, celebrate the wins.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
Share stories of how it led to something good. It keeps people motivated.
Right, when people see results, it's more motivating, right?
Absolutely. You got to show them that it actually works.
Yeah, that it's not just some, like, theory. It's something that can actually make a difference.
Exactly. Okay, ready for another challenge?
Hit me with it. We're building up our armor here.
I love that, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, this one's tough. Scaling culture.
Oh, right.
As a company grows, it gets harder to keep that strong design focus.
Right. What works for a small company maybe doesn't work for a big company. How do you scale the culture but not lose, what makes it special?
Yeah, good question. Honestly, no easy answer.
Mm-hmm.
But this analysis has some good ideas.
Okay.
One is to empower middle management. As a company grows, leaders can't be involved in every little thing, right?
Right.
So you got to create, design champions throughout the company.
Right. So it's not just like top down, it's also bottom up.
Exactly. Design thinking has to be everywhere. Create a critical mass of people who believe in it.
Right.
Right. So it's self-sustaining.
Right. Because then it just keeps growing.
Even as the company grows.
Yeah.
And it's also about, letting go of some control. Trusting your employees. They can't be told what to do all the time.
Yeah, they need to feel empowered.
Yes, exactly.
Mm.
Okay, so we've talked about resistance to change, measuring progress, finding that balance, keeping things consistent, and scaling culture. It's a lot, right?
It is a lot. It makes you wonder if it's even worth it.
That's fair. And yeah, it will feel overwhelming sometimes. Like, are we really making any progress?
Yeah.
But challenges, they can also be opportunities, right? If you know the hurdles are there, you can prepare for them.
It's about understanding that, you're never going to be perfect at this.
Yeah.
It's a process.
And design thinking is all about that, right?
Yeah.
Embracing the process, the messiness of it, the mistakes. It's how you learn.
Right. Right. Failure isn't a bad thing.
Failure is how you get better.
And that's why design culture is so cool, right? It's not just about better products. It's about a better way of working.
Right.
A way to solve problems. It can benefit anyone, any company.
Okay, I'm feeling motivated. But before we go on, I'm curious about, the bigger picture. How does this all connect to other things, like other fields of study? Design culture can't be completely separate from everything else, right?
That's a really great point. It's definitely connected to things like organizational behavior, leadership theory, even psychology.
Okay, tell me more about that.
So let's start with organizational behavior. How people behave in organizations, how they make decisions, how they work together.
Yeah.
Design culture can have a big impact on all of that.
Right, it makes sense. If you build a culture where people feel safe and they work together, it's going to change how they do things.
Right.
Absolutely. It's all about that human element. And then leadership theory.
Okay.
The way a leader acts, it has a huge impact on the team,
Yeah.
on the culture. If you're a leader who believes in design thinking, it's going to create a strong design culture.
You just have to actually believe in it.
Yeah, you can't just talk about it. You got to live it. And then there's the psychology piece. This is the cool part. Remember psychological safety.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing in psychology. Amy Edmondson, have you heard of her?
Oh, yeah. She's like the expert on psychological safety. But remind me, how does her work relate to all of this?
So her research shows that psychological safety is really important for teams to perform well, especially when it comes to innovation.
Right.
If people feel safe speaking up, sharing ideas, even messing up, they're going to take more risks.
Right, right.
They'll experiment. They'll come up with more creative solutions. It's not just about feeling good. It's about doing your best work. And her work also shows that psychological safety is really connected to something called a growth mindset.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of that.
Yeah. That's the belief that you can always learn and grow.
Right. So like embracing those challenges, seeing failure as an opportunity to get better.
Exactly. And that fits perfectly with design culture, right?
Right.
Because design thinking is all about experimentation and learning from your mistakes. You have to be okay with messing up.
Right. So failure isn't bad. It's just part of the process.
Exactly. And that takes psychological safety and a growth mindset. It's so cool how all of this stuff is connected,
Yeah, it really shows how, design culture is part of human nature and how we work together.
It's not just a fad.
Right.
Okay, so why is all of this so popular right now? What's going on?
Yeah, good question.
I think it's because the world is changing so fast, right?
Hmm.
Business, technology, it's all moving so quickly. And in today's world, design culture, it's not just a bonus anymore. It's something you need.
Okay, but why? Why is it so important now?
Competition. There's so much competition now, right?
Yeah.
Companies are fighting for customers, for attention, and design culture, it makes you different.
So it's not enough to just be good anymore.
Nope. You have to be
You
amazing.
have to stand out.
You got to be different.
Hmm.
You got to connect with your customers on a deeper level. And that's where design thinking comes in. You
Okay.
got to understand your users,
Right.
empathize with them, come up with creative
Sounds
solutions.
like you gotta make something that people love
Yeah,
and they tell all their friends about, right?
exactly. That's the key.
So design culture is about more than just pretty products.
So much more.
It's about like building a successful business.
It is a business that understands its customers.
Right. And cares about them.
Yeah. And that's why I'm so into this topic. It's about making things better for people.
I like that. Making the world a better place.
It sounds cheesy, but it's true. And this brings us to the next part of our deep dive, where we'll talk about the specific things you can do to build a design culture. Ready to put all this into practice?
Absolutely. Let's go. Okay, so we talked about a lot in this deep dive, right? Like those 7 core elements of design culture. We talked about real world examples like, the Google thing.
Yeah.
And we even connected it to psychology and leadership and all of that. So it's not just about aesthetics, right?
No, not at all. It's really a whole different way of thinking about how organizations work, how they create products and services.
Yeah, and we talked about some of the tough parts too. Like how do you actually measure if it's working,
Oh.
right? And how do you keep that design focus as the company grows?
Yeah, those are really good questions. And it's tough. There's no easy answer, but I think the important thing is to just, be aware of those challenges and try to address them head on.
Yeah, it's a process.
It is, it's a journey. It's not like you just, arrive at design culture and then you're done. It's constantly evolving.
Right, right. So, we talked about those practical steps too for building a design culture, right?
Yeah, we did.
Like making sure people feel safe to share their ideas, collaboration, encouraging people to be curious and experiment,
Mm.
and making sure that leaders are actually supporting it.
Yeah, those are the big things. And, they sound simple, but when you try to actually do them, it can be hard.
Yeah, I bet it takes like a lot of commitment.
It does. You have to be willing to try things out, to learn as you go, but it's worth it.
Okay, so what's the payoff? Like what happens when you actually create a design culture?
When you actually create a culture that's focused on people and design, you
Yeah.
unlock all this creativity and innovation. And it's like people get more engaged. It can really change a company.
Okay, so any final thoughts for our listeners today?
Yeah, I think the thing I want people to think about is like the ripple effect. What would happen if every company, every organization embraced these principles of design culture?
That's a good question. What would the world be like if design thinking was everywhere?
Right. We'd have products and services that are really designed for people,
Right.
that solve real problems,
Okay.
that make our lives better,
And workplaces that are more fun.
more creative,
Yeah.
more fulfilling.
And leaders who actually care.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Leaders who are focused on making a positive impact.
So it's about more than just making things look pretty.
Yeah,
Right. It's about making the world a better place.
it really is.
Well, that's inspiring. So, listener, as you go about your day, think about what we talked about today. Think about how you can apply these ideas, even in small ways.
Yeah, even small things can make a difference.
Right. So be curious, be bold.
And design a better future.
And that's it for our deep dive into design culture. Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep designing.